This podcast is made possible by funding from True Patriot Love Foundation.
We all know what we have to do to eat properly. We all know what enough sleep looks like. We could all probably cite the stats or tell you how many fruits or vegetables we have to eat a day, or, that we need to be physically active. But the reality is that very few of us actually do it. So we have to create systems and structures, and that's at a societal level, but it's at a family level too. We have to create family patterns and behaviors and structures that promote our health.
The military lifestyle is all-encompassing.
It's difficult, but rewarding.
Dynamic, very, very dynamic.
Unpredictable.
You are in the Canadian Armed Forces or a family member connected to the military. You know the lifestyle can be a challenge.
The military lifestyle is always changing.
In this podcast, we explore the world of deployments, postings, and transitions. This is the military lifestyle. Here's your host, John Shaboon.
The military lifestyle can be hard on kids, especially when part of their support system is away. Maintaining good physical and mental health is so vital, so important. Maryse Neilson is Health Promotion Manager at CFB Esquimalt and joins me to talk about the factors for good health and some things for you to do to set your kid up for life. So today I'm talking with Maryse Neilson, Health Promotion Manager. Is that correct?
That's
that the
right.
title?
Yep.
So welcome today.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking promoting health with kids. Tell me, what are the different types or kinds of health?
Well, health is a huge topic, obviously. But, the ones that we really kind of look at are physical health. That would include our sort of physical literacy. So how capable we are to do different developmentally appropriate movements with our body, our nutrition intake, and how we feed our bodies or nourish our bodies so that we can optimize their health. And then obviously a really important one with kids and adults is our mental health. How do we encourage resiliency? How do we help kids develop? The language we're using right now is mental fitness. So just like we have our physical fitness and we think about how we have to sort of really work at and engage our physical fitness on a regular basis if we expect to stay physically fit, we need to do the same thing with our mental health, right? We need to practice mental fitness on a regular basis and do things that promote our mental health.
And when you mention physical stuff, I think of things like diet, sleep.
Yeah, sleep.
Getting exercise.
Huge piece, right? With kids and adults for sure. Active living, right? How much activity do we need each day? And how do we do that in an environment, especially these days where it's getting more and more challenging to be physically active? A lot of kids don't walk to school anymore for lots of complex reasons. It's harder and harder for kids to just sort of play independently outside. Our neighborhoods just aren't as designed as well to promote active living, and our structures in society aren't. So even if we have our kids, active in all sorts of sporting activities and things like that, we're kind of just losing more and more of that capacity for kids to just play independently. And when I was growing up, we just left the house and kind of played outside most of the day. We just don't, I have kids myself and we just don't do that anymore.
I remember when I was a child, I would walk to school and I was elementary school age, and we didn't go with any adults or anything.
No,
it was just a group of us going as a kids. Yeah. And back in the day, I guess those days have passed. And with the mental side or the mental health side, what are some things like? Is that just like the ability to bounce back, adapt to adversity? Is that
that, and just that? even if we think about, those are sort of hallmark traits of resiliency, right? Which is getting lots of attention these days because we know that childhood anxiety is on the rise, childhood anxiety and depression. And that, again, there's lots of complex reasons for that. It's not a simple kind of thing to unwrap, right? Or unpack. But how do we help kids become more resilient? But also, how do we help kids express a wide range of emotions and feel okay about that? How do we as adults manage our kids' multiple, emotions and feelings? And how do we teach ourselves and our children how to self-soothe in the face of increasing anxiety, right? All the important things that we know help us learn to cope with more and more adversity.
So, what are the factors for good health?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a huge question. Well, if we're talking about how do we support our kids to be as healthy as they can be, right? The work that we do in health promotion is we look at how do we, rather than kind of create this recipe for individual health, we look at how do we create healthy communities. So it's really a public health model. And if we look at that as families raising our children, there's sort of 5 things that we want to think about. In a health promotion or a public health model, we look at helping develop individual skills. Things like following the Canada Food Guide, making sure that you get enough vegetable and fruit intake, making sure that you are limiting, sugary and like non-nutritional kind of foods as much as possible, and really keeping those as treats, making sure that you are getting the right amount of sleep. So educating ourselves and our kids as to what makes optimum health. You mentioned sleep already. So kids need, anywhere from sort of 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. Most kids. They also need to be getting at least an hour of active living every single day. So no breaks for kids every single day. That can be broken down into sort of, 10 or 15 minute chunks of time. And it doesn't mean they have to be running for an hour or playing soccer for an hour, but they need to be moving their bodies. They need also to be having a number of different opportunities to practice new physically developmentally appropriate skills, learning how to throw a ball, learning how to catch a ball, learning how to run, learning how to kick their legs a certain way, learning how to balance, developing core strength, all those sorts of things. Those are, of course, for children who are able-bodied, and kids with physical limitations or disabilities would have different developmental stages to reach. So we teach individual skills. Then it doesn't matter how many individual skills you have if your environment isn't supportive. Then we need an environment that promotes health. So that might look like having lots of healthy foods in your fridge, having pre-cut fruits and vegetables ready to go so that your kids can snack on those things. It might look like creating an environment at home where we only take the car if it's more than a mile away. Otherwise, we walk or ride our bikes. It might look like we limit screen time, because we know that screen time can interrupt sleep for kids. It can also increase anxiety for lots of, again, complex reasons. And so we want to create an environment that promotes health and makes health the easiest option. The third thing we want to do that we do at a sort of public health level is when we think about how do we create healthy public policy? So how do we make sure that we have these optimal goals in mind? And so as a family, you could think about, what are our sort of policy statements, right, for health. So we're going to all be active on the weekend together. Every weekend we're going to do a different hike. Every weekend we're going to go for a bike ride. Every weekend we're going to make a healthy meal together. Or each kid, depending on their age, is going to take a different night and make a healthy meal. We're going to prioritize family time together, and we're going to say that there are certain rules around screen time, right, or phone time. And so those rules, family rules, are an important sort of way of setting up success. The fourth thing we do from a health promotion perspective is we mobilize community action, or we strengthen community action. So that's, it's great if we as parents are helping our kids develop all of this capacity to be healthy, but it's even more awesome when they develop that interest and commitment themselves. It's how do we transfer those kind of external values and make them internal for our kids. And that takes time, and it takes experience, and it takes, having fun doing healthy things, and it becomes sort of habit and rewarding, right, for them. And then the last thing we do from a health promotion perspective is we move our resources from sort of, if you think about health in a public health sense, right, we spend a ton of money on people who are sick. So in a health promotion model, we would spend more of that money preventing illness. From a family perspective, you could sort of think about, we're going to spend some of the money that we would have spent on a new gaming system. Instead, we're going to buy bikes this year. Or we're going to spend the money that we would have spent going to, on a trip. Maybe we'll invest that in creating a really cool backyard with badminton nets and volleyball nets and things like that, right? So it's about kind of moving some of the resources you would spend as a family from into things that promote health, things that make healthy living easier. whenever the healthier choice is the easier choice, we're going to win. And so that's what we want to do from a health promotion perspective, even with our kids, is just make sure that healthy choices are easy and quick and rewarding and available.
The military lifestyle, do you find that it contributes to more health-related issues in children than civilians? Do you see that?
I don't work specifically with military kids, so I can't say that with any legitimacy.
I've seen research done from the United States where they would talk about the mental and behavioral issues, stress disorders, be a higher rate than civilian populations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you think about the added demands of military life, right, and the added stress in particular on families, when members are deployed, when communication is difficult, when members are in scary places, and all of that sort of can lead to just less stability for children. I think there's an opportunity there for kids to develop really important resilience skills. But yeah, for sure, we need to think about how does mom or dad being away for a prolonged period of time impact a kid, and how do we support that child? And so those mental health supports or the mental health promotion piece in that regard would be super important. I know there's great resources available, on pre-deployment support workshops, and also just support groups even for children to meet while their parents are deployed or while a parent is deployed to just normalize that, right? When we know that other people are going through the same thing we're going through, it just makes it easier to understand, easier to work through, and we can share that experience with other people.
Establishing healthy behaviors, definitely easier to do that in childhood rather than change unhealthy behaviors when you're an adult. Or
there's no doubt about it, and the data is concerning when we look at things like, if we don't we talk about it like as a bit of a blueprint, right? So under 6 in particular, if kids do not have that blueprint for active living, that blueprint for healthy eating, for self-soothing, to get to sleep, all of that sort of stuff, those healthy habits that promote longevity and health, it's really hard to catch up. A child who's never been physically active is unlikely to start being physically active as a teenager or an adult if they've never had access to that in childhood. And same with weight. And having a high weight or being overweight is not in and of itself necessarily a health issue if you're active and you have all sorts of other healthy attributes. But being really overweight as a child, it makes it really difficult to ever be a healthy weight as an adult, right? So we want to teach those things as early on as possible and really just help our kids develop those healthy habits and healthy relationships with food and activity, and to, like I said, enjoy them. Kids have to have fun while they're doing it. We all do. I mean, even adults. It's the other thing I just really want to say is that, the important thing to remember about health is that we all know what we have to do to eat properly. We all know what enough sleep looks like. We could all probably cite the stats or tell you how many fruits or vegetables we have to eat a day, or what, that we need to be physically active. But the reality is that very few of us actually do it. So individual behavior shaming is not helpful. It's much more complicated than just sort of saying, hey, if you know what you have to do, you'll do it. The reality is even with all of that information, very few of us actually do the things we need to do to stay healthy and optimize our health. So we have to create systems and structures, and that's at a societal level, but it's at a family level too. We have to create family patterns and behaviors and structures that promote our health.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Is there anything else you would recommend to military families? If you start early, can you tell me, what does that look like?
Yeah, so starting early might look like, instead of having a TV on while you're making dinner with your kids, getting them involved, or having, if you're going to have a book by tape or something, put a book in on a CD, or find a book online and have it read out. You could also have your kids help in creating dinner, looking at how do you prepare a healthy dinner. From a mental health perspective, it's normalizing a wide range of feelings and behaviors. When we look at children who are upset and crying and having a difficult time with maybe some grief and loss, rather than making them feel immediately better about that because it's uncomfortable for you, letting them sit with that and showing them that you're comfortable with that and that you don't have to go anywhere, that you can just be with them and support them through that. So there's so many things we can do early on that help our kids understand what healthy looks like, and healthy from an emotional perspective, healthy from a physical perspective, from a sleep perspective, spiritual perspective, all of those things. I think that you have to make it fun. You have to make it easy. If you want to promote bike riding with your family, then keep your bikes somewhere where the kids can easily get them. Make sure they're tuned up. Make sure you have helmets that fit. Make sure that you have taught road safety so that kids understand. And you can there's so many trails in Victoria. You can do those bike rides together as a family. I think sometimes it can be tough for families, where most of us work. We're working at home if we're not working outside of the home. If we have a partner who's away or we're a single parent family, then kind of pulling everything together to go for a bike ride on the weekend probably feels like a huge extra challenge. So maybe you just go for a walk to the grocery store, or maybe you just turn off the screens and play outside for half an hour.
And you mentioned it, cooking together is a great idea.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as shopping together,
cleaning the house together. Like, you think about it, you're moving, bending, gardening together. Like all of those things are teaching.
I can teach my kid to weed.
Yeah, you absolutely you can.
My gosh.
And think about the physical skills they gain from, like if you've ever weeded for 3 or 4 hours, you know how it feels the next day, right? And kids, they gain core strength. They're satisfied by pulling the weeds out. You get creative, but keep your kids active, keep them off the TV and internet. And every day there's new guidelines coming out, right? But the really, I think, important ones to remember are no screens before the age of 2. Okay. The Pediatric Association of Canada has said there's nothing of value that comes from putting a kid in front of a screen under the age of 2. That in fact, there's all sorts of things that negative things that can happen when you do that. Any other kid, don't over rely on screens. So keep your screen time to sort of half an hour a day. And that's tough to do. So if you have a TV in your family room or in your kitchen, turn the thing off or get it out of there. So screen time is a big one. Physical activity.
Do you find gaming is
increasingly challenging as sort of the grade 3 probably and up crowd? I find in my own family, the things that we have done that have worked really well are we don't have any screens upstairs. So what that means is that's where the way that our house is structured is our kitchen and family room are all upstairs. So we have a TV room downstairs, but it's not the focal point of our day-to-day activity. So we have to go downstairs to watch TV. That really limits the amount of time that screens are on. We don't have gaming consoles in our house, but lots of people do. So you have to figure out how are we going to limit the accessibility and the time spent on one of these. Or, just iPads for kids now, right? And phones and all of that stuff. We could spend a whole other podcast just talking about that. But I think, the big ones to remember that I would suggest are limiting screen time, an hour of physical activity every day. Try to promote spontaneous play. So meaning, lots of play dates, lots of non-adult interfering opportunities for kids to get down and dirty and learn from one another. You think about how many sports teams and things that our kids are now involved in that have constant rules and adults managing them. And when kids don't have the time or the freedom to explore some of those social rules themselves, they never really learn how to negotiate social situations when adults aren't around. So we want to give them those opportunities to do that. We want to give them the chance to learn how to argue with their friends, to learn how to take turns, to learn how to manage conflict, right? Those are all important developmental skills, and they're all part of being a healthy adult. In terms of nutrition and food intake, put lots of healthy things in front of them, but let them decide what they put in their body. You want to help them create a healthy relationship with food. And so over managing what they actually eat is a slippery slope. You want to be careful about that. And then water and sleep, rather than just drink water. That's our thing. Drink water. You don't need juice. Certainly don't need pop, and you don't need power drinks. That's for sure as a kid. And so just water and lots of sleep.
All you need to do is see it's not a scientific study. It's just feed cake to young children at a birthday party.
Yeah.
You see what happens to them.
Totally.
They usually try to do it at the end of a birthday party.
Always. Yeah.
And the kids start getting
Send 'em
hopped
home.
up, and then it's like, time to go.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
So
But, I also think that kids, being a child should be magical and fun.
yes.
And we should have, we don't want to demonize or vilify any food. Cake is, of course, something that you should all enjoy on occasion. And having a special drink on a special dinner, or at a party, that's also a great thing to do. But when when we're primarily eating sugar and refined sugar and not really thinking about, these things as treats, then it becomes challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. When it comes to mental health,
Yeah.
what are some things to do to promote that? I mean, we talked a lot about the physical side, but
Yeah. So the mental health side is so important for kids. Like I said earlier, we are seeing definitely much higher rates of anxiety in kids as young as 7, 8 years of age, right? And we know from, that we're having a real explosion of anxiety when kids go to university. It's not just imagined, it's real. There's complex reasons that we can't get into necessarily now for why that is. But some of the ways that you can support positive mental health in your child is by again, setting up structures that promote that. So physical activity and mental health go hand in hand. Also the ability to talk openly and honestly about how you're feeling and it's not your problem to solve those feelings, but just to give, to listen to them and to normalize them. It's okay, it's okay to feel sad about something that's sad. In fact, it's healthy. Getting more comfortable as adults with a whole host of feelings, and sometimes we aren't comfortable with those feelings ourselves when we have them. We don't want our kids to hurt. And so we try to take that pain away, but it's really an important thing to learn how to sit with your feelings of discomfort and recognize that they don't have to become the definitive way that you feel, that they will pass and that you can learn to cope and that feeling sad is not the end of the world. Now, if your child is starting to exhibit symptoms of sadness all the time, then that's a problem. You want to find out what that's about. But from a health promotion perspective, lots of sleep, lots of physical activity, healthy foods, and also just healthy expression of feelings, talking openly and honestly, sharing your own experiences of what it was like to be a kid and how you can remember feeling that way can go a really long way just to sort of helping kids understand and negotiate and manage all of this conflict that they're experiencing.
And if you have a very small child, when they're very small, sometimes they can't express themselves as much. But trying to build that literacy, trying to build that way to express how they're feeling.
Yes.
Definitely a challenge.
Yeah. So one thing to remember is that all behavior is communication. So when we can look at behavior and not get upset about it, but rather try to understand what a child is trying to communicate to us with that behavior, then all of a sudden it becomes an opportunity to have a conversation, or if they're not able to talk at this point, then to give them comfort, right? Or to, they're trying to tell you something that's going on for them. So yeah, if you don't have language yet, how do you support mental health? Well, lots of ways, lots of touch, lots of cuddle, lots of reading, lots of talking constantly.
Reading is actually, I think,
huge piece. Yeah.
A huge piece.
Yeah. There's so many studies out on the impact of reading to your child well into their teen years. When they're a teenager may not want to cuddle with you while you're reading to them, but little kids will. And so, yeah, having them sit on your lap and read every night, creating a tradition of doing that, that's very powerful time together. I think how you promote mental health in children is that you're present with them. You give lots of time and energy and experiences to them. Really important, especially when they're maybe not behaving exactly the way you would like them to, or they are struggling with their emotions, is that you sit with them. You show them, I'm okay. I'm comfortable with sadness. It doesn't, I can ride this out with you. And then you're going to teach them. When they're watching you ride it out, they're learning how to do that themselves. The other thing, is we want our kids to know that it's okay to fail, whatever that means, but that success is not always winning. It's not always being the best, but a really important part of resiliency is learning that it's the effort that matters, right? It's the intention and the effort. It's not necessarily the result. that's important, right? So what did you learn from this experience can be much more important than whatever you received because of it. But our kids we live in a really kind of a world that rewards achievement and success in a very narrowly defined way. And I think we have to be really careful about buying into that too much. And so sometimes kids who do extremely well because they've had all sorts of supports and, have never really experienced failure, when they go to university and they're not getting straight A's and they recognize, oh my gosh, it's so much harder, when I don't have my parents here to do all these things for me, they really do struggle. So yeah, promoting independence, promoting all of those important skills, right, that go with independence, starting that at an age appropriate level, not over functioning for your kids. All of those things are important to promoting good mental health.
The lifestyle, it will definitely contribute stressors.
Absolutely.
But it's all about how you face them. What do you do when the support structure is away? One thing might be, I think, you obviously modeling, adult modeling, but if you only have maybe one adult in the mix.
Yeah. Very stressful, very challenging. If you are feeling isolated and you literally are isolated, how do you change that, right? And I think it's really important to reach out, to join networks when you can, in anticipation of a deployment or something like that, to really, if you're not already connected to other partners on that, whose partners will be away on that deployment, do that. I know you've got through the MFRC, you guys have lots of opportunities to do that through your ship networks and things like family support and things like that. One of the realities of being a military family is there's extra work required in terms of getting that support. You don't have your families around all the time, even if you're regularly posted, and you don't have those professional networks either that you can rely on. So you've got to make some connections wherever you can, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because, none of us can do this work alone. We have to support one another. And so I think really, reaching out to the MFRC, reaching out, there's lots and lots of resources available, but you got to go and find them.
Is there anything else you'd mention?
The really important thing with promoting health is that we can very quickly become overwhelmed with all of the data and all of the ways that we can, how do you measure health? What's most important in children and adults is that we have good mental health, meaning that we are feeling sort of like, we use the language of living in the green. So the green meaning good to go. It doesn't mean, by the way, that you're constantly happy and perpetually optimistic. It just means you can cope and function and you're generally feeling pretty good. Pay attention to the behaviors that we know tell us, can indicate that there's a problem with our mental health. Okay. So pay attention to them in yourself. Know what to look for in terms of what those signs are in kids. And they're the same, by the way, right? They're the same with the exception, obviously, of the gaming, gambling, and substance use, right? Obviously, we wouldn't be looking at that, hopefully, in certainly small children. But yeah, we want to pay attention to all of those things, but we want to keep it fun. Health needs to be seen as a resource for everyday living, not as this kind of strict, hard to achieve, kind of optimum way of living in this world.
It shouldn't be a pain.
It should not be painful.
No.
It should not be difficult. It should just be most of the time we're feeling pretty good, and we're paying attention to what we put in our bodies, how we move them, what we do, how we spend our time, and to really kind of create an environment that supports that as much as possible. It's kind of like, if you go to the store and you buy tons of crappy food and you bring it home and then you feel badly because you ate it. Well, of course, that's not creating a supportive environment. If we have lots of junk food lying around, we'll eat it.
Yeah.
And so just, that's a really simple example of creating an environment.
What I do is I'll buy lots of fruit.
Yeah.
And I'll bring it to work, and then I'm forced. I'm at
Exactly.
work, and I'm just, what am I going to eat?
Yeah.
I'm going to eat fruit.
Gotta eat fruit. And make it fun for kids, right? Like there's no reason why, and adults too, by the way, we are way more likely to pick up a cut piece of fruit or vegetable than we will a whole fruit or vegetable. Nobody's going to walk over to an unpeeled carrot and start chomping away on it. Well, maybe one or two people will, but most people won't. But if those carrots are cut up with some nice, healthy dip or hummus and a bunch of other vegetables, and it looks attractive, we'll eat them. That's also about doing the things that we know people will respond to. And kids are the same way. If you make it fun, they'll eat it.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That was great.
You're very welcome.
If you're interested in learning more about health promotion, you can visit their website, cafconnection.ca. That's C-A-F connection.ca. Before I leave, I just want to thank you for listening to the first season of The Military Lifestyle. It's our first year. So thank you to everyone that took time to send us feedback. Some very, very cool comments. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions, comments, feel free to send them via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Email us at communications@esquimaltmfrc.com. We are planning on future episodes, so you can look for those later this year.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Military Lifestyle. To learn more about this episode and to check out our other resources like the deployment app, go to esquimaltmfrc.com. A special thanks to True Patriot Love Foundation for funding Season 1 of this podcast, and to Organized Sound Productions for bringing our idea to life. Please share this podcast with your military family or with someone living the lifestyle. Subscribe to The Military Lifestyle on your favorite podcast app. Your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening.